Welcome to Silver Bar Stacker, folks. I hope everybody's doing well and enjoying their Sunday. That's right, folks. Today's Sunday, and today we've got an interesting one for you today, folks. Now, this past week, I actually got an email from one of our repeat subscribers, viewers, and actually one of our supporters on our weekly Whatnot auctions, and they were actually asking us, hey, I'm kind of interested in the vintage fractional silver, and I was wondering, hey, have you done any videos on that topic, on vintage fractional silver in general? And I said, hey, you know what, actually we've actually done a pretty recent video on that exact topic, and so I linked them to one of our recent videos on Johnson Matthey fractional silver and gold. So we had actually done a sort of deep dive specifically on the JM stuff, but I said, hey, you know, if you're looking for a little bit more information on some of the more common pieces that you would see when it comes down to vintage fractional, and specifically when it comes down to the stuff that we sort of specialize in, I said, hey, let me put together something new for you for that's specifically catered to kind of the more common fractional pieces. And so here at Silver Bar Stacker, you know that we love our Johnson Matthey and our Engelhard pieces, and I would say a vast majority of the products that we have available on our store and on the different platforms that we sort of sell on and have things available, I would say easily over 50 to 75% of those products would be by Johnson Matthey and Engelhard. Now, when it comes down to vintage silver, there are countless of refiners out there that you could kind of go down the deep rabbit hole and start to collect pieces by, and they all vary in different weight ranges. You got 100-ounce bars, you got your 10-ounce bars, you got your 1-ounce bars, everything in between there. You got odd weight stuff, and then anything that is below 1 troy ounce. Like this is a 1 troy ounce bar here. Anything under 1 troy ounce would be considered fractional, at least when we're talking about the silver variety. And even if you're talking about gold too, anything under 1 ounce of gold will be considered fractional. Of course, a half ounce of gold is not going to be a cheap thing to buy, right? So fractional gold in that sense is not always accessible, right? Even a half ounce of gold is very difficult for most general layperson to be able to accumulate. And so when it comes down to fractional for gold, we really start thinking about a gram or less than that, or maybe like a 10th ounce piece of gold, quarter ounce piece of gold. After that, it starts to get pretty pricey for gold. Now, when it comes down to silver, anything under an ounce would really be considered fractional, because I mean, generally speaking, if it's especially if it's not something that's collectible, I mean, you can go and get a half ounce silver rounder bar for probably less than $20 easy, right? Now, over here you've got yourself a half ounce bar, but this is a Johnson Matthey half ounce bar, and so this is typically going to run you at a much higher premium than your $20 that you're probably expecting to pay on a half ounce bar round, right? So I was thinking, hey, since we got a request about a video for vintage fractionals, and the sort of precursor for that question was like, if I'm going to be going into my LCS, what are the sort of pieces that I want to be keeping an eye out for, right? Because this individual shops at their LCS, and so they're always able to see very, very cool things. They might, you know, on eBay, you might see auctions for a 5-gram Johnson Matthey bar going for, you know, 4, 5, 6 times spot or more. Yet, if you go to your local coin shop, they may not, in many cases, they do not have the foresight, and even if they do have the foresight, they still wouldn't, because of the way that their business runs, they wouldn't charge you 5 to 6 times above spot like somebody on eBay will, or somebody like even our store, we do too. We don't sell these for less than 5x spot, even though, you know, it's a relatively common fractional piece, but relatively common in the grand scheme of things when you're comparing to other JM pieces means 100,000 minted bar. So 100,000 minted is not that low. I mean, if you look at any American Silver Eagle, your American Silver Eagles are going to be what, a million minted or more, even for the proofs. So those are very, very high mintage compared to some of these more obscure, no longer produced vintage pieces. Okay, so the purpose of this video today was, hey, instead of going through all these obscure pieces that you're probably not even going to come across, let's go over some of the more common pieces by some of the more common refiners that you would expect to see. And tell you a little bit about those different pieces so you kind of know what to look for when you're looking for those, right? So we're not going to be talking about 100-ounce bars. We're not going to be talking about all the different types of 10-ounce bars. We're not going to be going through 1-ounce art bars. We're setting these aside, and we're looking at things that are smaller than that, okay? And I said we're going to be focusing on JM and Engelhard, and you'll see here that this is mostly JM pieces. Why is that the case? Well, that's the case because if you actually look historically, if you go on allengelhard.com and you start doing your research on the different types of odd weight pieces that are less than 1 ounce, you'll find that there are very, very few Engelhard ones, especially when it comes down to common Engelhard fractional pieces. Heck, there's not a lot of Engelhard fractional pieces to begin with, and those that you do have available are not very high mintage. Is really the thing, right? So let's start off with the smallest and we can work our way to the highest, or maybe we'll start with the highest since we already talked about this 1/2-ounce silver bar, and then we work our way down. Okay, so we started with this is a 1/2-ounce silver bar by Johnson Matthey. Now the thing is that there are more 1/2-ounce silver bars out there. This is just one of the variations. Now let me tell you a little bit about this variation. Here, this is a 1/2-ounce silver bar. You got a blank back here. You got a little bit of funky, weird toning going on over there, but this is a blank back. Typically, sometimes you might see a bar that has kind of like this hammer logo on the back, right? So that there is actually a 1/2-ounce bar, JM, that has a hammer logo back as well. Those will vary in mintage. This is one of the slightly higher mintage bars, but this is not very high mintage. I believe this is like a 10,000 minted or I think it's actually a 5,000 minted bar, something like that. It's pretty dang low mintage for a bar, right? So despite this only being 1/2 ounce, you have to pay actually significant premium. I don't think I've ever bought these bars for much less than $100 for a 1/2 ounce bar. This is not even 1 ounce of silver. This is 1 ounce of silver. So this is smaller, right? And it's probably even a little bit thinner as well, because the face is not half the size. So it's thinner and it's a smaller face, and that's how you will compare kind of the size difference. You're used to probably seeing 1 ounce bars all the time. This is kind of what your 1/2 ounce bar is going to look like. So if you see something a little bit smaller, then that should be an indicator. Whoa, what is that? And typically I like to look for any sort of fractional pieces, because generally the premiums will be higher if it's a little bit something more collectible. So you kind of got a diamond in the rough. You're picking up a great value piece, really, if you're grabbing any vintage fractional, in my humble opinion. Of course, on the resale market, you got to find somebody who's actually interested in that, because otherwise the LCS will just turn around and give you the same melt value, close to melt value that they're selling it to you for. But this right here is going to be a blank back Johnson Matthey 1/2 ounce bar. You'll also find the one with the hammer logo bars, and those are going to be the more readily available ones that you don't see them often, but you will every once in a while. They might pop up. Now, something that you won't see pop up very often, and which I don't even have an example to show you because they're typically so expensive on the secondary market when available, is it'll be a blank back, but it'll actually have a border around the edge. So if you actually, and I think possibly it might have been, I don't know if the individual who has inspired this video reached out to me recently about it, but I think he may have actually, I don't know. I'm not going to quote myself on that, but I believe they may have reached out to me with the variation that has the border on it, and I said, whoa, that's one that you're definitely going to want to grab, because that's super rare, right? If it's got the border on the back and a blank back, that's super rare. These ones are a little bit more readily available. I've actually got a couple examples of this one with the blank back, and I think I do actually have this one available on the website as well, on the Silver Bar Stacker website. So if you're looking to pick up a 1/2 ounce JM bar, then this one we probably have at maybe not a reasonable price, but relative to the market price, if you can even find one of these on the market, it might be a reasonable price. Okay. So the 1/2 ounce silver bar JM, you've got 3 different variations, if I'm not mistaken. And don't quote me on that. You can go on allengelhard.com and do your own research. And I'm sure there's probably other 1/2 ounce bars that are rarer types that might have different designs. But when it comes down to kind of like this standard sort of JM design, you got 2 blank backs, one with the border, one without, and then you got one with the hammer logo on the back. Okay, and those are going to be the more common JM bars to look out for. And of course, if you ever see a JM stamp or some other rarer variation, that's definitely going to be one to look out for. But these are the ones that you can expect to sort of pop up from time to time, maybe at your LCS or wherever it is that you shop for your vintage silver. Now, moving from the half ounce. We already halved in size from a 1 ounce down to a half ounce. Now what do we got? Now we got to move down to the 5 gram. Now I think there are some 10 gram bars out there as well. I don't believe that those are very easy to come by, and even if the estimated mintages are higher on that, I don't think that you'll come across those that much. But if you do come across a 10 gram JM bar, that is going to be pretty uncommon, and so definitely something that you would want to probably scoop up if you can get it at a reasonable price. Moving on to the more common JM bars that you will see, there are actually going to be your typical style 5 gram silver bar. Now, there are actually quite a few, if I'm not mistaken, 5 gram JM bars out there that are rarer variations and sub designs and stuff like that. But when it comes down to kind of the commercial style pressed bars that have this sort of reminiscent, nostalgic sort of design on the front and nothing too spectacularly unique on the back, there's going to be 3 different 5 gram variations. And so there are 2 variations that are very, very common. You see them pop up all the time. 100,000 minted each. Those are going to be these 2 bars right here. These bars, all the 5 gram bars originally came issued in these little plastic seals, and they came in sheets of, I think, 20 bars if I'm not mistaken. So you had a sheet of 20 5 gram bars, if I'm not mistaken, all stuck together, and then when you plop them out of those little sheets, then this is what they would be sealed in. So all these 5 gram bars came issued in that same way. Now, what makes these bars different, they all kind of look on the face value similar, but you immediately recognize that, hey, the design's a little bit different here. You've got only 2 rows here, a narrower box there compared to these ones. And then actually on the back here is what I showed you earlier. You've got that JM Hammer logo there on the back. So this right here is a 100,000 minted 5 gram silver bar. And right next to that is also 100,000 minted. So you've got 200,000 minted between the 2 of these. And you've got 100,000 minted, 100,000 minted. One with a blank back, and this actually has a border on it, and this has a JM Hammer logo on the back. And you can see the difference between the fronts there. You got this fine silver 999 here, and then fine silver 999 in 3 rows there on the front. And there's slight variations here. This one says Johnson Matthey, Assayers and Refiners in small text, and this one says JM, no Johnson Matthey spelled out, and just Assayers Refiners. So that's how you can tell the difference between the 2 different common 5 gram variations. But then there's something to note actually. You know, there's only one type of JM Hammer logo back on that, just like on the half ounce version, there's only one type of JM Hammer logo on the back. But again, on the 5 gram variation, just like on the half ounce variation, you have 2 different blank back variations to worry about. So on the JM Assayers and Refiners, what you needed to look out for on the blank back variations is that one has no border, right? One has no border and one has a border. That's the difference on the half ounce variation. It's a little bit different here on the 5 gram bars, and it's actually a little bit, in my opinion, harder to be able to distinguish the difference here. But if I show you 2 in front of each other, you'll be able to quickly tell, hey, what's the difference here? So this one right here is not 100,000 minted, but I believe this is estimated at 5,000 minted, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how accurate that figure is, but according to Engelhard, that's what it says. Now, if you look at these up front, these are both blank back bars, and in this case, they both have borders. They both have borders, so you wouldn't be able to look at the back and tell the difference. You have to look at the front. Now, in addition to the serial ranges, which, you know, the higher serial numbers typically fall in line with these lower mintage bars, look at the text difference. You have to really look with a keen eye, but if you look, the text here is bolder and thicker. So you got thicker text here, and that makes this a rarer bar here on the right. The more common blank back 5 gram bars that you'll see will look like this. And then every once in a while you'll come across one of these thick date ones, and these ones sell probably for like double, I would say, generally speaking, compared to the lower mintage ones. Now, I was telling you, there's not a lot of fractional stuff, especially common fractional silver when it comes down to Engelhard, and in fact, there's only one common, and if you want to even call it common, it's still a relatively low mintage bar. This is a 15,000 minted bar estimated, and I believe that to be accurate actually, because I've never seen a EMC 5 gram bar that has a serial number past 15,000. So all the serial numbers I've seen have been less than 15,000, which leads me to believe that, hey, this is probably a pretty accurate mintage figure, since this is the only 5 gram common Engelhard silver bar that exists. So it's got the EMC bar logo there on the front, and then on the back you've got the repeating Engelhard logo. So this is quite a toner, which I do love about this bar. and that's very, very beautiful. So this right here is a 15,000 minted bar. Now this is not going to be something that you'll see very frequently. You'll come across those JM 5 gram bars a lot more than these Engelhard 5 gram bars, because this is really the only common 5 gram Engelhard bar that exists. You'll have some other much rarer variations, some with pendants, some with just a E rather than an EMC, and other kind of variations like that, but those are much, much rarer, and those you'll definitely probably never come across. This is something that you may, if you get lucky, you might come across, and of course you should definitely, in my opinion, something you should grab, because the premiums are obscene on the 5 gram Engelhard bars compared to like the 5 gram JM bars, even the thick date ones, right? Like these sell for significantly higher, and I think the reason for that is because this is really one of the only freaking examples of fractional Engelhard common variations that you have to collect. Anything past this is going to be even harder to find and even higher premium, right? So this is something that a lot of people out there are probably gunning after, because there's not a whole lot of Engelhard fractional silver out there. Okay, Engelhard fractional gold, yes. Engelhard fractional silver, not so much. Now when it comes down to the final fractional piece of silver that we're going to be going over, this is something we have talked about on the channel before, and it's something that we have always had available on our website, and that is going to be the elusive 1 gram Johnson Matthey silver bar. Now this bar right here is something that is going to have the hammer logo on the back. This is the only common 1 gram Johnson Matthey silver bar that is out there, and rather than it being 100,000 minted like each of these 5 gram variations are, this thing is estimated at just 10,000 minted. So there's only 10,000 of these tiny little fractional wafer 1 gram JM bars that are out there, and on top of that, this is the only variation. There's no blank back variation, there's no other variations outside of extremely rare 1 gram JM bars, but this is the only common commercial style 1 gram JM bar that exists. Okay, and on top of that, there's only one of them, and it's only 10,000 minted. So this 1 gram bar, believe it or not, I'm not talking about the price per gram, I'm talking about just the price for this bar. The price for this bar will consistently outperform the sale price of this bar and this bar. That's just a common fact. That's just a market price. That's just a going rate, and the reason for that is because there's 200,000 of these out there and there's 10,000 of these out there. So people don't care when it comes down to collecting, especially when it comes down to collecting fractionals. You're no longer really concerned much with the price of the melt value of the silver. You're concerned with the additional specs, the additional layers of value that fractional piece of silver brings. Because when it comes down to fractional silver, pretty much in any case, even if you're not dealing with vintage, it really comes down into collecting territory and not really stacking territory. When you come down to vintage fractional, there's no way, shape, or form that it would be considered stacking. It is really just a collecting thing, and so you're collecting pieces that intrigue you, and the premiums are often reflected based off of things like mintage, the design, subjective opinion on the design of a bar, availability of that particular bar despite what the estimated mintage might be. So all these different factors kind of come into play, and that's kind of one of the reasons why your 1 gram JM bar will pretty much never, if you can find these for under 30-40 bucks, that's a killer deal. I mean, that's I've never been able to find one of these bars really. I've accidentally sold some of these bars for less than that, but I have never had an opportunity to really buy them for less than that. So, and there's very, very few of these out there, so when they're available, then I do like to grab them, but they're very, very high premium bars compared to some of these other bars, as is this bar. These ones not so much. These ones kind of higher. This one, yeah, quite a high premium for a half-ounce bar, but relative to some of the other rarer half-ounce bars, maybe not so much. I mean, I've seen the half-ounce variation with the border on the back selling for hundreds of dollars for just a half-ounce bar. And so this is just something that I wanted to go over with you, so that, hey, when you are shopping, you are kind of trying to keep an eye out for this, you are trying to add some of these examples, one of these examples maybe to your collection, then you know what to look for. You can see them on the table, and you're like, oh, I'm going to grab that, and that, and thank you so much. Anyways, I hope this video was very useful for some of you, especially those who are interested in vintage. And if you're not interested in vintage, hopefully this kind of steered you in a way that, oh, I'm kind of intrigued in this now. Maybe I'll try to do a little bit more research on this and maybe check out the silverbarstacker.com website and learn more about these pieces. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, please feel free to do it. We've started kind of trying to get more active with our blog posts as well, and so we do have a whole blog section where we will continuously be adding articles about new products and new items that you might want to be keeping an eye out for, and also various things that we kind of look out for on the market. We're always kind of assessing the market for not just our products, but just generally pieces on the market. And so if you ever want to be kind of stay up to date with what the latest happenings are here at SBS, be sure to kind of check out our latest blog posts, check out our website, check out our social media pages, and of course, as always, we will be trying to do a Whatnot auction as we do every week or most weeks. So here for our weekly Sunday auction, we will be having some fun later this evening on whatnot.com/user/silverbarstacker. And if you would like to just give us a follow there, you will be notified of when we go live. We usually like to put that on the calendar, the Whatnot calendar, maybe an hour or so before we go live, and then that way everybody has a heads up of when we're going to start the fun. So if you are interested in taking part in some auctions, we have a lot of nice vintage and fractional silver up for sale and also up for auction. We're doing a lot of $1 starts, so be sure to check us out there. And if not, we will see you on the next SBS episode. Cheers!